I tell former students, I tell some colleagues, and I said, look, it almost doesn't matter how long it takes you to get that professional designation. It's a lot about enjoying that journey.
Can you please introduce yourself, just mentioning your profession and what you've done so far?
Sure, I can do that. My name is David Cuthbert. I am the principal architect of Cutworks Architecture Limited, which is an architectural and consultancy practice that I started in 2017. I hold registration in Jamaica. My registration number is 192 to kind of give you an idea of exactly how far in the process. I think as an architect, I am still considered one of the young ones. Thank God. I started my career professionally on the island of Montserrat, which is a very small island with a very big volcano, where I was a government architect for about 7 years. My primary role there was a lot of the rehabilitation buildings after the volcanic eruption. I I spent a lot of time during that also just traveling around the Eastern Caribbean and also working with a couple small firms, designing everything from healthcare facilities to resorts to housing, office buildings. Pretty much I was just trying to get my feet, acclimatized to pretty much everything. I am not in any way, shape, or form a specialist in any one thing. I like to know a lot about a lot of different things, and so the architecture profession provides that, and yeah, it's where I happily reside. Next question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cuthbert. And I really like the fact that you are comfortable with exploring your different interests. I believe a lot of students are interested in many things and they're finding it a bit difficult, or they may find it difficult to settle on one thing or specialize. So I like the perspective you're bringing. The next question is, when did you decide or realize that this is what you wanted to pursue?
Well, I think I'm one of the few that I think I wanted to be an architect before I knew exactly what an architect was and what they did. My earliest thoughts about the profession of architecture was about 7 or 8 years old. And it was a sense of actually being aware of the space around me. Um, and it was very much about understanding internal spaces, external spaces, seeing construction, understanding, even in a very sort of basic way about what they were doing and being able to visualize things that persons thought was a little bit strange. I came from an art background. Years when I was much, much younger, 4 and 5 years old, I spent a lot of summers at Institute of Jamaica, and they used to have these summer camps. And I routinely was, I was always in the classes, and they moved me from the junior classes to the older classes, to much, much older classes. So I've always been around, so the general art form. And it just kind of over time, matriculated into this love of spaces and this love of architecture. And, from about that time, that's all I've wanted to do. The funny story about that was I was at prep school and they had a careers day, and much like most schools where they say come dressed as, this profession, that you want to go into. And I had no idea what architects look like. I didn't, they don't really wear uniforms. They don't have this persona, this sort of visual persona at the time that I thought. And and sort of like really losing my mind, I think at last minute I just decided to go as a pilot. And the night before, I actually made this pilot's uniform. And so it's it's very sort of coincidental that I ended up making this thing to be a pilot, but not understanding that in the making of this costume that I really was exploring this whole notion of, what it means to be an architect. And ever since then, I'm always kind of keen to talk to persons about what it is, what do architects look like, who are we? And I think it's a very important sense of, I think, who it is and who we are, because we represent many creeds, and classes. No two architects are necessarily the same. even just our own levels of passion varies. So, in a long answer, I've wanted to be an architect for a very, very long time. And oddly enough, I still very much love what I do, and I still very much want to be an architect.
So, from hearing you speak, I realized that one of the challenges you may have faced was trying to define who you are as an architect, even from someone with an art background. But are there any other challenges that you faced or difficulties that you faced while preparing for your career or beginning your
Uh,
career?
Yes, there's a number of challenges, and I think a lot of it has to do with what it actually means to be an architect. Where it's a profession, so very much like law or medicine. It's that finishing school doesn't just automatically make you an architect. You kind of have these processes after you leave the academic settings where you have to show sort of professional experience, and then you have to sit examinations before you're invited, or you can actually be asked to listed in the register. So it's very much like law where you're called to the bar. In this case, it's more like actually being registered. So we in Jamaica and within the English speaking Caribbean, the process of actually studying architecture and actually getting that professional degree is kind of twofold in terms of your academic setting, where you often have to do an undergraduate degree that is kind of focused around architecture. And then you have to do a 2-year master's degree or a professional degree where the 2 years are focused strictly on the kind of the ins and out of what it would actually mean to be an architect. So it's less, it is still a lot about designing, but a lot of it becomes, some of those soft skills around architecture that we don't often think about. So a lot of it is about understanding, codes and procedures in the profession. It's about understanding ethics, about understanding our relationships between, say, clients and contractors and other consultants, and how we fit into that melee. After all of that period, you often have to go out to work and, gain more experience. And my trajectory was a little bit different. So where there were colleagues of mine who finished their masters and went immediately to work for firms in Jamaica, I went off to Montserrat. And so, in a couple of years when they were registered, I was still in the Eastern Caribbean, just kind of learning, what it meant to be an architect in the Caribbean. And not just in a traditional sense, because I think there had been, so much of this notion about architecture in a very colonial sense. I really was trying to understand, what is a contemporary architect look like? How is it that we practice? How is it that we navigate all of these scenarios that we have, about understanding contemporary society, but also very much trying to balance things of tradition, balancing things of our own environment, and just the delicate nature of which, everything kind of sits together. And it was a lot about doing that. And after the 7 years and I returned to Jamaica, all of a sudden I was now back in the process. I'm trying to become registered in Jamaica. And so the whole process from me finishing my master's to becoming registered was a lot longer than most people. But I don't look back at it with any remorse or anything. And I think in many ways it colored how I looked at the profession in a very healthy way. And I often tell, I tell former students, I tell some colleagues, and I said, look, it almost doesn't matter how long it takes you to get that professional designation. It's a lot about enjoying that journey. And I would say that was definitely one of my biggest challenges. And I think the second one is the challenge that I have on a daily basis, which is, operating and running a small architectural practice. It comes with its own set of headaches and its own challenges, and I have enjoyed it, but it is definitely, it's definitely a difficult one.
Well, from where you are very successful, and I believe you have overcome a lot of the challenges you're facing, and even the ones you're still facing to this day. So, how have you overcome, and how are you still overcoming the challenges you face?
Honestly, a lot of it is just, I don't know, perseverance. I think there is something to be said about when you enjoy what it is that you do, and I really do enjoy my work. I enjoy my profession. I enjoy my colleagues. It's the thing that I'm most interested in. For fun, I like to read about architecture and watch films about architecture. And some people might say that's a little bit too much, but it's a bit of a vocational calling. I really do this because I love it and I enjoy it. And I also find great kinship with those that have a similar kind of things. It's not to say that I don't have other interests, but I find everything, you can find a way to tie everything back to architecture. Me, that's really how I overcome a lot of those challenges where it's what I'm doing on a regular basis. So I don't, my brain doesn't necessarily turn off from the setting. It's really just changing perspectives of how I'm looking at issues.
As you said, Mr. Cuthbert, what helped you to overcome your challenges were perseverance and having joy and finding love in your work. So which aspect of your career do you enjoy or love the most?
Oh, that's a challenging one. I think because I've kind of done, different things, I I would say that the things that kind of touch back to my roots, sort of going back to art. So I think anytime that I'm sort of sitting and drawing or designing, I generally enjoy. But I also really enjoy this, which is talking about architecture and talking about the profession. I was fortunate enough to have taught at the Caribbean School of Architecture for about 10 years. And in that capacity, it was great because it was, a day in, day out that I was talking about the profession and hearing people's ideas. And there's a part of it, that sort of mentorship, I really did enjoy, and not necessarily just guiding younger ones, but also being, having my own mentors, and understanding that I sort of fit within this whole line, this trajectory, of architects in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. And to me, that's really one of the most enjoyable things. Whenever that I have challenges, I reach out to persons who may have done it before, and vice versa. I have persons who reach out to me and who are trying to get things resolved or trying to, figure out an answer, and that I can help to provide it. And those are very important things to me, and it's really the other aspect that I enjoy about the profession.
Now we're at the end. Thank you so much, Mr. Cuthbert. But before leaving, I know you said or mentioned that one of your favorite parts of your career is mentoring the younger ones. So I have one last question. Do
Sure.
you have any advice for those who are interested in taking a similar path?
Yes. I would say the first thing is find an architect to talk to in Jamaica. I think there's nothing better than being able to confirm that this is something that you want, or even just learning more. If it is that you don't know an architect directly, you can contact the Jamaican Institute of Architects, and they will happily put you on to one. I see somebody wearing an immaculate uniform. We have several architects who are alumni of Immaculate Conception High. And we have a long trajectory of persons who have come out and who are in the profession. They're it's always the best thing to be able to just talk to somebody to find out what it's like. To be invited to one of our meetings to kind of see what happens when we're in that type of setting, or even be invited on to something as simple as a building site to kind of get a sense of what things look like when they're actually coming out to the ground, and at the various levels that they're at.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cuthbert. Thank you for speaking with us.
If you are a professional interested in sharing the experiences you've made along your journey toward your field, please email us at thestudentinitiative98@gmail.com. Comment down below what other professions you would like to hear from.